The next part of Lesson 6 is going to talk about using sync lock and track lock. And these can be located in your timeline. The book is wanting us to go ahead and open up the sequence bin and Theft Unexpected 02. So go ahead and double click that one and you now have a new timeline open. When it's talking about sync lock, it is referring to this icon right here on each of your tracks. And when it's talking about track lock, it's talking about the little key lock symbols that are on each of the tracks. Each one of these can be engaged separately or they can be engaged at multiple times. Basically, when it's talking about sync, a lot of the times the most familiar one is if you're watching a video and you see somebody's lips moving that no longer match the words. That would be when something got out of sync. Other things are harder to detect. Other ideas or things to think about is when a person starts talking, you may want to see a lower third identifying their name, or if something else that needs to come up at the same time visually is timed together. Those are considered synchronized. So utilizing these locks will help with that. So as we move through this, we're going to work through the using sync lock part of the chapter. So we have our sequence open. It now says we want to open the mid-suit clip. So we're going to go to Theft Unexpected bin, and right here, double click, it will put it up in its source window. It wants us to mark in position at 1:15:35:18. So I'm a little bit off, just move it. And then your shortcut for the in position is I on your keyboard, and then an out mark at 1:15:39. I'm just going to use my arrow keys to shift us over because it was not very far, and choose O on your keyboard to set the out mark. It now wants us to move our playhead in this timeline to the very beginning. If you click home on your keyboard, it will take you to the very beginning, or you could have scrubbed your playhead up to that clip. Either way will get you there. Alright, it now wants us to deselect the sync lock for video track 2. So that's this one right here. Click it one time, it puts a slash through it. So it is no longer selected, it's deselected. Let's see. V1 track is patched. So you want to make sure some of your other settings are correct. So this is where it's talking about the patch. We want this one to be here and this on A1. The rest of it looks good. This reflects what the book has. Also, take a look at your position of your mid-suit cutaway clip on the video 2 track. So it is talking about this here clip up here. So we want to keep an eye on this one as we perform this edit, because we have this deselected. You're going to see how it affects this. So the next thing it wants us to do is edit the source clip at the beginning of the sequence. So up here, this is your insert button. Just click it once. Notice that put the clip at the beginning, but this here clip never moved in our video track 2 line. So it got out of sync with where it originally was covering up these 2 clips. So everything else shifted to the right while this stayed in its same position. And of course, that would put us out of sync, and then the book says, because we've now figured out what that button does, it wants us to undo it. So Command Z or Control Z, depending on if you're on a Mac or PC. And then it wants us to turn the sync lock back on. So again, pay attention to this clip. It's back in its position, and it wants us to repeat the process. So we're going to come up here and click our insert one more time. Notice everything, including the stuff on V2, has now shifted to the right. So everything stayed in sync while we applied that new edit. So that is your sync lock being engaged or unengaged. And we're also now going to look at track locks. So when you turn one of these locks on, for example, I'll turn it on our audio track. So if this was all music playing down here, it would lock our music into position. And this here also overrides our sync lock. Track locks like supersede that. So even though one was engaged, it would be overridden by this here choice. But what that would do is if this was all music, it would hold the clips all in place. So if I was putting in clips for a music video, I could make as many adjustments here and I wouldn't have to worry about the audio sliding around or getting deleted or shifted in any ways. It has this cross lines that go through it. That is signifying that the track is locked. And you can have more than one track locked at a time. You can lock all of them if you want. It just depends on what you're trying to work with. So if I was just trying to affect the video and not the music, this is a good setup for this. So as you continue to work, you'll find your style and what is best for you. But if you want to make sure something doesn't move, a track lock might be a way to go. Okay, and then it also is talking about gaps in the sequence. So I don't see any here at the moment, but I'm going to make us some. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy some of these clips. I'm going to put them down here, and then I'm going to space them out because the next part of this chapter was talking about having gaps. Okay, so this is the gaps that they're talking about, and there's several ways to get rid of them. One is an extract edit. It's like the insert edit, so you would use the buttons up here if you had it mapped, or you would have to add it, and it would pull out the space that's empty here. Another thing that you can do is highlight the space, and then if you can hit backspace or delete on your keyboard, it gets rid of the spot. You can also right click and use ripple delete to have the same effect. I'm going to hit Control Z and put those two spaces back at this point because this part of the chapter is talking about using the sequence up top here, and then it wants us to choose go to gap. So we're going to go to here, and then you can choose next in sequence, previous in sequence, and next in track or previous in track. So it just jumps our playhead from one to the other. One of the other things that you can do is, I just demonstrated using the delete button or the ripple delete. You can actually close multiple gaps at one time. So if you made a bunch of changes and now you're like, oh, these all need to go back together, you come up here to sequence and then you choose close gap right here. And as you watch the timeline, they all vanished. So it pushed everything together. Nice little way to clean something up. And I'm going to undo that, and then I'm going to delete these because that was just for demonstration purposes. So that is talking about gaps in sequence.